So we'll create the player turn. Now, what I've done was I tried distancing all of these elements just so it would be easier to follow. I'm going to explain things as I go and put in some new comments. So I'm just going to wipe out this little bit of clutter here just to make it a little bit easier to follow what's happening inside the player and computer turns. So when we're starting the main part of our program, we want to keep going while we actually have cards. So while the deck is not empty. So we use the not exclamation point empty. We are going to do the following. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make our turnover value become false. So it won't be ready to switch player's turn until we tell them to. So like when they miss and have to draw a card from the deck, that is when we're going to switch the turn. So if turn is 0, this is going to be the player turn. Else if turn equals 1, this is going to be the computer turn. Of course, turn can't be any number other than 0 and 1, but I just put the if here just to make it a little bit more clear. It identifies it a little bit better in the code. So if it is the player turn, here's what we're going to do. First thing, we're going to distance. We're going to create a little bit of space here, so we're going to put cout and L. And then we'll tell them that it is their turn. So we're going to put in your turn. Now what we want to do is we want to do the player's turn because potentially they could be successful and guess correctly many times in a row. We're going to do this while turnover is false. So while not turnover, we're going to keep going over and over and over again through this. Okay, so on the player's turn, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put another end L here. And then we are going to display the user's hand. So here's how it's going to go. We're going to go cout hand like this. Now we have a little bit of a problem if the player starts their turn and they have no cards. So we're going to have to draw them a card right here. So if user hand dot empty, then what we're going to do is we will deal deck comma user hand. So we'll give them a card from the deck. And then we will display the user hand. So you see how easy and convenient this whole thing is when we've got all our functions already created for us, and then we can just sort of put them in this way as we need them. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we will get them to enter their number that they will be requesting. So we'll have a do here. So I'll explain the do loop in just a second. Enter a request. And then we're going to cin the request. And then we'll keep going while request valid is false. So we're going to create a function that will determine whether their request is valid or not. So it's going to be user hand, comma, request. And then we just have to write that function. So go above main here. So of course this is, I'll just scroll down a second. This is acting as a Boolean statement. So the type of this one is going to be bool request valid. And we'll put it right here. So request valid needs vector int hand and the int request. So the important thing about this is if the computer asks for 3s and then takes all your 3s and then you want them back, you can't request them unless you have a 3 in your hand yourself. So we really need this to prevent the user from cheating. So what we've got to do is we've got to check to see if the number they're requesting is actually in their hand. So int I equals 0, while I is less than hand.size I plus plus. So if hand position I is the request, so if we've found the number that they requested, we're going to return a true. However, if we go through this entire for loop and we don't find the number, what we're going to have to do is see out an invalid request, and then we'll return false. And then that's going to cause the main program to ask them for another request. Okay, so we've got it up to this point. Now what we're going to do is we're going to check to see, now that we've got a valid request, we're going to see if they were successful. Is it in the opponent's hand? So for that, we're going to use an if statement and another Boolean function. So we're going to call it fish. So the act, as according to the game rules, is when you make the request, you're fishing in your opponent's hand for the card. So fish will require a couple things. Your entire hand, because that's where the card will go. The computer's hand, that's where the card will come from, and the request. And it's going to return a true when the card is actually in the opponent's hand. So let's create the fish function. Go above int main. So Boolean fish is going to have vector int. Now we don't care which player's hand it is because we're going to be reversing this. So vector int hand 1 and vector int hand 2. And then we'll have the request. So this is a big part about making the function reusable is we won't care which hand is which, because we're going to be reversing this for the later version. We're going to have a Boolean success, which is going to start at false. So before you find the number, we're going to treat it as you have not found the number. That's why we need a false here. So for int I equals 0, while I is less than, now we're going to be looking for the card in hand 2. So hand 2.size I plus plus. So what we're going to do is if we find it, so if hand 2 position I is the request, so we actually found the number, what we're going to do is we're going to use sort place to put it into your own hand. So sort place hand 2 position I, so we're putting the value into the hand and we'll send it hand 1 because that's the hand that it's going to be put into. Now we have to remove it from the opponent's hand, so hand 2 dot erase hand 2 dot begin plus I. There we go. So we'll erase that. Now what we have to do, because when you do that,
please excuse the interruption.
Sorry, when you erase this, it shifts the entire array to the right. Or sorry, it shifts it down to the left. So we've got to back up a position. So we've got to go I minus minus, and then we're going to go success is true. Now this is important. We can't return true here because potentially there is more than one copy of that in their hand. So that's why we set it to true, meaning we found at least one, and then it's going to keep cycling through the cards to see if it finds any more. When we're done, we are going to return success to the main program. Okay, let's finish this off. So here we go. If the fish ends up being true, what we're going to do is we are going to cout success, go again, because the user will get to go again. And then the user score, this is where we're going to check to see if they've got a new complete book. So the user score is going to become equal to user score plus book user hand. And then we also have to make a separate thing here. So this is a little bit of an adjustment from the actual rules of the game, but it simplifies our program a bit. What we have to do is we have to check, did we get the last card from the computer's hand? If so, we're going to break and give them a chance, because we don't want to make a request from an array that's empty or our program is going to crash. So that's a little bit of a bending of the rules, but oh well. So that's a success. Otherwise, they have a failure. So cout go fish. You know what? I'm gonna all caps this. Go fish. Because that's the key phrase of the game. Go fish. And in that case, we are going to deal a card from the deck to the user's hand. And then user score is equal to user score plus book user hand. Okay, so we'll check again to see if there are any new books, and then we'll say the turn is over. So turn over becomes true. So we're going to end the turn. Now, a couple other things that we have to do is we have to verify that the deck is not empty at this point. So we're going to need to put an if deck.empty. Then we're going to break, because the game is now over at this point. And when we pass through this turnover, we're actually going to have to change the turn number. So turn becomes 1. So that way it knows when it begins this loop again, it's going to start with the computer's turn. So save this, and then in the next video, we're going to be working on the computer's turn instead.